February, we celebrate Black History Month. It's a time to honor heroes like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King.
I'm sorry, start over again.
Each February, we celebrate Black History Month.
What book are you reading?
Carter reads the newspaper.
Let me see it. Okay, go on.
Each February, we celebrate Black History Month. It's a time to honor heroes like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King. But there's one hero we sometimes forget. Carter G. Woodson didn't help people escape from slavery, start a bus strike, or lead a movement of millions. Yet without him, we might not have Black History Month. This is his story. Carter was born on a small farm in Virginia in 1875, 10 years after the end of the Civil War. Carter's parents, James Henry and Anne Eliza, were born into slavery, and Carter grew up hearing about their lives. The stories they told weren't part of any history book, but Carter kept them in his heart. James Henry had run away from his master to join the Union Army and fight for freedom. Times were hard, though. After the war, James Henry worked on the railroad, saving enough to buy a few acres of worn-out land. Most years, the crops brought in $100 or less. James Henry Woodson. Anne Eliza was unbelievably brave. When she was a girl, her master decided to sell her mother. Anne Eliza asked him to sell her instead. That way her mother wouldn't have to leave the other 5 children. But no one offered enough money for Anne Eliza, so her master sold the mother and 2 little brothers instead. Aunt Eliza didn't see them again until after the Civil War. She never forgot the horror of standing on the auction block. Aunt Eliza Riddle Woodson. Carter's parents struggled to feed and clothe 7 children, especially in winter and early spring. Food was scarce. Carter, the youngest one, said, "We would leave the table hungry to go to the woods and pluck the persimmons." Many times he had to jump into bed early on Saturday nights so his mother could wash his only pants and shirt for church the next day. Carter could only attend school 4 months each year. The rest of the time he was needed to work on the farm. Learning didn't happen just at school. James Henry taught his children to stand up for themselves and take pride in who they were. He gave Carter the courage to look anyone in the eye and declare, "I am your equal." And though Carter's father couldn't read or write, he believed in being an informed citizen, so he asked Carter to read the newspaper to him. But newspapers weren't easy to come by. Sometimes Carter read from old ones that had been used to wrap up theater packages. Reading the newspaper gave Carter his first glimpse of the wider world.
And who was Ida B. Wells?
Ida B. Wells?
A journalist.
Oh, really?
Who wrote about lynchings. Where would you have read about lynchings?
Newspapers.
Newspapers.
Carter longed to go to high school, but his family needed him to earn money. When he was 15, he hired himself out to nearby farms, working long hours under the hot sun. He also drove a garbage wagon. High school would have to wait. Carter's older brother, Robert, found good paying work in the coal mines of West Virginia. Carter decided to join him there. Mining was grueling work for a boy not yet 17. It was dangerous. Once, a piece of slate came crashing down on Carter's head. He never forgot his time in the mines. Years later, Carter said, "I am a coal miner and I can take anything."
You want to work in the coal mines when you're a teenager?
No, not one bit. In this harsh place, Carter met a man named Oliver Jones. You'd have to look hard to find Oliver's name in a history book, but in that small mining camp in Fayette County, West Virginia, Oliver did something important. He changed one life. and that life changed many.
In what county?
Fayette.
Fayette?
Fayette, whatever.
Or Fayette? Is it Fayette or Fayette?
Fayette.
Fayette.
Fayette. Oliver Jones. Like Carter's father, Oliver was a Civil War veteran who believed in education. As a soldier who had been at the Battle of Appomattox on the final day of the Civil War, Oliver had fought for freedom and equality. He was still willing to do his part to further the cause, said Carter.
So he met a former Civil War soldier.
Yeah. Each evening, after working in the mines, Oliver threw open the doors of his little house to other miners. He made his home a reading room, filled with books by African American writers and with newspapers from all over the country. He sold ice cream and fruits at prices the men could afford. At first, Carter just went for the food, but that changed, Carter said. When Oliver Jones learned that I could read, he soon engaged me to inform him and his friends as to what was in the daily newspapers. Carter was happy to oblige. He liked reading the newspapers. Besides, he said later, I always enjoyed nice things to eat. Carter admired Oliver. He was a well-educated man, but he could neither read nor write, said Carter. He learned through others. Carter began to learn in the same way.
So notice that Carter could read and write, which is great. But he even considered Oliver a well-educated man, even though he couldn't read and write. So it doesn't stop you from learning.
Carter longed for school. Life at Oliver's tier room turned out to be school of a different kind. When Oliver and the other miners had questions about something Carter read in the newspaper, it was Carter's job to research the answers. If a Civil War veteran was in the news, Oliver wanted to know all about the man. I had to look him up in the books, informed my friends as to what battles he had fought, said Carter. If there was a question about economics, politics, or new law, it was up to Carter to find out all about it in the newspaper and explain it to his friends.
So hang on a second. These black people who could neither read nor write were coming together to learn. And the black person who could read and write was helping them learn.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys do that? You guys gather with your friends and help them learn?
No.
Oh, okay. Go on.
Carter was inspired by Oliver and this circle of men committed to freedom, equality, and knowledge. Men whose own life stories would never be in the history books. And so the seeds of Carter's own life work began to grow. My interest in penetrating the past of my people was deepened.
So his interest in understanding what had happened to his own people was deepened by his reading and learning.
Yeah. Carter worked in the mines for 3 years. When he was 20, he moved home to Virginia to start high school. He finished in just 2 years. Carter went on to college and became a teacher. He continued to study and work, earning a master's degree when he was 33.
A master's degree from Harvard. He was the first black man to earn a master's degree, or PhD rather.
Then, when Carter was 37, he earned a PhD in history from Harvard University, the second African American to do so.
But
W.E.B. Du Bois was the first.
He was the first African American to earn a PhD in history from Harvard. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first African American to graduate with a PhD from Harvard, but not in history.
Oh. Carter was the first and only black American whose parents had been slaves to receive a doctorate in history. At Harvard, so the story goes, one of Carter's professors said that the black people had no history. Carter remembered his father's pride, his mother's courage.
Hang on a second. One of the professors at Harvard said that black people had no history. Do you know that the history teachers in this region today do not know the history of black people?
Yes.
Because they believe the same thing.
Carter remembered his father's pride, his mother's courage, and Oliver's determination to learn. He remembered reading the newspaper. Carter spoke up. No people lacked a history, he said. The professor challenged Carter to prove him wrong. For the rest of his life, Carter did just that.
Love that.
In 1926, he established Negro History Week. Later, it became Black History Month.
Now, hang on a second. Not just later. It wasn't until 1976 when the Republican president, Gerald Ford, turned Black History Week into Black History Month. And every president ever since has signed that proclamation every February that designates February as Black History Month. Go on.
Didn't Carter die 2 years ago?
President Carter did.
No, I meant Carter G. Woodson.
I think President Carter died last year. I think it was. Yeah, last year.
I'm talking about Carter G. Woodson.
Oh, you'll get to that.
Carter chose the second week of February to mark the birthdays of Frederick Douglass, and Abe Lincoln. Today, our entire nation celebrates Black History Month, and we honor Dr. Carter G. Woodson as the father of Black history.
Do we really?
No, I've never heard anyone talk about him.
Exactly.
But in 1926, Carter was alone with his new idea. He had to blaze a trail. Then there's a bunch of pictures of people.
Nice.
He had to spread the word at a time when there were no computers or internet or televisions. So Carter sent pamphlets about Negro History Week out to schools, colleges, churches, and women's clubs. And of course, he sent notices to the newspapers.
Can we do that?
Yeah?
Can we put together pamphlets and teach people in our community about Black history?
Yeah?
Okay.
The boy who began by reading the newspapers to others transformed the way people thought about history. He fought for a history based on truth, a history that includes all people. Carter G. Woodson didn't just study history, he changed it, and we can too. That's it.
So when did Carter G. die? How long was he alive?
1875 to 1950.
So how many years is that?
75.
So who was Carter G. Woodson? Josiah.
You're asking me?
Well, you were sitting there listening.
Listening.
Yes, I was.
I'm assuming you were listening.
He was the son of 2 slaves, one of which got her mother and 2 brothers sold away. And he was the only one in his family who could read, so he read his dad the newspaper because his dad liked to stay informed. And then he found work in coal mines where he met a guy named Oliver. And Oliver held a little party thing at his house after the job where he sold ice cream and fruits and had people read about all sorts of African American stories. And he had a ton of books about them. And it was Carter's job to research about all the political things that were happening at the time that Oliver and his buddies liked to learn about. And so Carter grew up reading the newspaper, and so he became interested in his history and his people's history, and he graduated from Harvard with a PhD in history, and that's about it.
And he started an organization. Did he tell you about the Association of Negro Life?
The Association for the Study of African American Life and History.
The Association for the Study of African American Life and History. It used to be called, when he started it, the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. And through that organization, he started what?
I don't know.
Black History Month,
And they called it then
Negro History Week.
Negro History Week. And that ultimately evolved into Black History Month through a proclamation in 1976 by President Gerald Ford. And now we know who Carter G. Woodson is, or was, or he still is, the grandfather of Black History Month.
The father.
The father.